Christmas Romance Al Dente is one of those films that's okay, but I didn't really enjoy it. But when I reflect on it, there's no specific reason for that. The characters are fine, the narrative is fine, the pacing is fine. It's got a reasonable amount of Christmas in it. It's not the most Christmassy film, apart from the premise, but in terms of being full of, decorations and lights and even food, even though it's based around a restaurant, I didn't feel the food aspect was very Christmassy either. This was released in 2020. It's directed by Damián Romay, written by Kelly Peters and Amy Catherine Taylor, and it stars Annie Krueger as our protagonist, Natalie. And Natalie is helping her sister open up her new Italian restaurant because her sister doesn't think she's going to be able to do it. Something's happened, but her sister is determined to make it happen. And she works alongside the chef. Well, I say alongside, they often don't get along very well to begin with, as is what I was expecting for their relationship. And it's all about the pitfalls and the efforts that they make to try and get everything ready in time for opening. Will they be able to do it? Well, I won't divulge that, of course, but it's an interesting enough narrative. It's got a really sentimental theme because she's trying to get it open for Christmas Eve because she wants to have the restaurant open so that people who don't have anywhere to go for Christmas can have somewhere to go. And that's a really sweet message, and it's nice that they're working towards that rather than just wanting to get it open for the sake of it. There's also a more emotional reason behind it, and that meant that I hoped for the best. It wasn't just a business decision that was driving them forward, but also one out of kindness as well, and that meant that I did want to see things come to fruition in time. And there were guests that were meant to be attending, and obviously she didn't want them to have to change their plans, so I hoped for the best, and I think they encountered a reasonable amount of problems for it to be a fairly well-written narrative with enough issues for them to overcome without it seeming like everything was a disaster. Sometimes films like this can just have a few too many problems and it seems unrealistic, but this one actually I think was a very believable narrative. I think the relationship between Natalie and Stefano, played by Gilles Marini, and I apologise if I've mispronounced that, was a fairly likeable relationship, and it did take me a bit of time to get behind them. I didn't love them as a pairing completely, but after I'd say maybe the first half an hour or so, I kind of started to get behind that part of the narrative, and ultimately it wasn't too bad. As I said, it's not the most festive. There's enough Christmas in it that they can call it a Christmas film. But if you're playing Christmas bingo, I don't think there'll be too many things you can tick off of your list, which is fine for some people. I know some people don't like Christmas films to be baked with too much Christmas, if you know what I mean. So if that's you, then I think you actually might enjoy that part of it. But personally, I actually prefer Christmas films to be as Christmassy, as sickly, sweet and festive as possible. So it depends on what you're looking for, I guess. The food aspect wasn't as enjoyable as I'd hoped. There are a lot of Christmas rom-coms that are set in restaurants and bakeries, and usually they're done really well. Usually I can get a really strong sense of being there, and they may even make me want to bake or cook something, and I can't bake, I can't cook, but they give me that kind of warmth and fuzziness and that happiness that the characters are feeling. But I never got that. Maybe it's because they were so pushed for time that it kind of ruined the atmosphere, but honestly, it's not my favourite restaurant-based film, put it that way. Nevertheless, it's a pretty decent film. As I said, I didn't love it. I didn't come away from it feeling like I'd connected with the characters. I didn't come away from it feeling like I'd ever emotionally got behind the narrative. So I didn't come away with a warm, fuzzy, happy feeling. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with it. Apart from, as I said, maybe the relationship between our romantic leads to begin with wasn't that enjoyable. But beyond that, it's okay. If it sounds like your kind of film, I'd say check it out. But it's not going to be at the top of my list of recommendations for Christmas films this year. It's one that I'm probably going to forget pretty quickly, but I can't say I regret spending the time watching it because it's fairly okay and ultimately with some nice messages as well, so I can't complain too much.